The bank officer slid the eviction notice across the table like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Mrs. Morelle, I understand this is upsetting, but the foreclosure process has already begun. I stared at him. You've got the wrong person. He adjusted his glasses and turned the document back toward me. The property is legally registered under your name. My name, Lynsy Morelle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The same name my ex-husband had dragged through divorce court 3 years earlier while he walked away with everything we owned. I leaned closer, confused at first, then frozen. Because I recognized the address. Not just any house. Derek's house. The massive white 2-story home he'd posted all over social media after our divorce. The one with the marble kitchen and infinity pool. The one he captioned, "Fresh starts reward hard work." The officer kept talking, calm and clinical. The mortgage has been delinquent for 6 months. I started laughing. Not nervous laughter, real laughter. Sharp enough that the woman outside the glass office looked over. The officer blinked at me. Ma'am? I pointed at the address. Wait, Derek's been living there this whole time thinking it was his? His expression changed immediately. Not confusion. Concern. He slowly pulled another file from the stack, opened it, and lowered his voice. Mrs. Morelle, according to these records, your ex-husband may have committed serious fraud. 3 years earlier, Derek Morelle had left me with nothing. Not emotionally. Literally. By the time our divorce finalized, our joint savings were empty. The retirement account was gone. Even my car somehow ended up in his possession after his attorney argued it had been primarily used for marital business purposes. I still remembered standing outside the courthouse while Derek tossed my keys to a valet and drove away in the black Mercedes I'd helped pay for. Neighbors watched. Friends watched. And somehow, everyone believed him. Because Derek was a financial advisor. Confident. Polished. The kind of man who could explain anything with a smile and a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, I was the emotional wife who didn't understand money. That was the story he sold. And for a while, I almost believed it myself. The bank officer slid more papers toward me. Loan documents, ownership filings, mortgage statements. Every single one connected me to the property Derek had claimed outright during the divorce. This can't be real, I muttered. The officer tapped one signature line carefully. Did you ever authorize refinancing on this property? No. I never owned that house. But legally, he said quietly. You do. I flipped through the paperwork faster now, my stomach tightening. Then I saw the date. The mortgage had been opened during the final year of our marriage. And suddenly, I remembered Derek walking into his mother's hospital room late one night while I sat beside her bed half asleep. Just sign these tax forms, he'd said. I need them submitted tonight. I never even read them. The officer's phone rang. He answered casually at first, then his face drained of color. His eyes lifted slowly toward me. Mrs. Morelle, he swallowed. Your ex-husband just found out you're here. A beat of silence. Then, he's on his way to the bank. The second the call ended, I pushed the stack of papers back toward the officer. I want to see everything, I said. Every document connected to that house. He hesitated for a moment, then opened another folder from the pile beside him. The deeper we went, the worse it got. Mortgage renewals. Insurance forms, property tax filings. Some carried my real signature. Others looked off. Close enough to pass at a glance, but wrong in small ways Derek probably assumed nobody would ever examine. A memory surfaced so fast it made my chest tighten. You don't need to look through all this stuff, Derek used to say whenever bills arrived. That's why I handle finances. At the time, it sounded practical. Now it sounded rehearsed. The officer pointed to a line near the bottom of one application. This loan was opened 39 months ago. I did the math immediately. Final year of our marriage. Another memory hit me. Derek standing over me at 2 a.m. while I sat beside his mother's hospital bed. Sign here. For what? Tax paperwork. I already explained it. I'd signed without reading because his mother had just fallen asleep after hours of pain medication, and Derek sounded irritated that I even asked. Back in the bank office, my hands slowly lowered from the paperwork. "Oh my God," I whispered. The officer nodded carefully. "You may have unknowingly signed loan guarantees." I leaned back in the chair, suddenly hearing Derek's voice from divorce court. Lynsy was never involved financially. She trusted me to manage everything. She didn't contribute to the investments. At the time, the judge seemed to admire how organized he sounded. Now I understood why. "Why did the bank wait 3 years?" I asked. The officer opened another file. Payments continued until recently. Different accounts, different LLCs. But 6 months ago, the transfers stopped. He flipped a page toward me. One company name repeated over and over beside the transactions. I frowned. "I know that name." The officer looked up. "You do?" Derek used to talk about him constantly, some real estate developer he admired. The officer's expression sharpened immediately. Before he could answer, another phone buzzed on his desk. This time, he didn't even try to hide his reaction. He stood halfway from his chair. "Ma'am." His voice dropped lower. "Security just called." I stared at him. "He's here." The glass doors at the front of the bank slammed open hard enough to turn heads across the lobby. Derek walked in wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. For half a second, he looked exactly the same. Perfect posture, expensive watch, controlled expression. Then his eyes landed on the paperwork in my hands, and the mask cracked. "What is this?" he snapped, striding toward us. "Why is she involved in this?" The loan officer stood immediately. "Mr. Morelle, please lower your voice." Derek ignored him completely. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, already reaching for the file. "Lynsy doesn't understand these structures." Structures. Not house, not mortgage. Structures. Customers nearby started watching openly now. I stepped back while Derek turned toward the officer with that polished corporate smile I used to hate. "Can we discuss this privately?" he asked. "There's no reason to drag her into business matters." The officer didn't move. "Legally, Mrs. Morelle is attached to the property." Derek's jaw tightened. "She signed everything willingly." A woman sitting near the teller windows glanced over at us. Derek noticed and lowered his voice. But not enough. "This was an investment arrangement. You people clearly don't understand how leveraged financing works." That word hit me immediately. Leveraged. Not owned. The officer folded his hands calmly. "Compliance investigators are reviewing irregularities connected to the property." And just like that, Derek lost control. "Irregularities?" he barked. "You approved every refinance." The entire lobby went quiet. The officer blinked once. "Refinance?" Derek froze. Too late. I watched panic spread across his face in real time. Not anger. Fear. The kind of fear you only see when someone realizes they just admitted something they weren't supposed to say. The officer slowly opened another document. "Mr. Morelle, are you confirming there were multiple ownership transfers attached to this property?" Derek rubbed a hand over his mouth fast. "Temporary transfers. Standard financing strategy." My stomach turned. He hadn't just used the house once. He'd been borrowing against it over and over. The luxury vacations, the new car, the expensive dinners all over his social media. Debt. Every bit of it. Derek suddenly grabbed my elbow lightly and pulled me toward the side hallway near the exit. "Lynsy, listen to me," he said under his breath. "You need to sign a liability release." I stared at him. "You're begging me?" "It's procedural." "No," I said quietly. Procedural is when someone explains paperwork before using their wife's identity. His expression hardened. "Don't do this." I looked him directly in the eyes. "If the house was yours," I asked, "why was my name still attached to it?" Silence. Not denial. Not anger. Just silence. And that silence told me everything. Then the elevator doors opened behind us. Two men in dark suits stepped into the lobby carrying thick folders stamped with the bank's compliance seal. One of them looked directly at Derek. "Mr. Morelle?" he said. "We need to speak with you immediately." Within minutes, the bank separated Derek and me into different conference rooms. For the first time since our divorce, Derek couldn't control the conversation. One investigator sat across from me while another unpacked folders thick enough to look like legal textbooks. "Mrs. Morelle," the older investigator said carefully, "we need you to verify several documents." He slid the first stack toward me. Income statements, refinancing applications, LLC transfer records. My pulse sped up the deeper I read. Some signatures were mine, others were close enough to fool someone who wasn't looking carefully. The investigator pointed to one refinance application. "This approval relied heavily on your credit profile." I looked up slowly. "Mine? You had stronger financial history than Mr. Morelle." The room went silent for a second. That was the moment everything finally clicked. Derek never removed me because he couldn't. His entire image, the investments, the property deals, the luxury lifestyle, depended on pretending I still financially backed him. Across the hallway, Derek's voice suddenly rose through the glass. "This is being blown completely out of proportion." One investigator closed the door harder. The older man in front of me continued calmly. "Did you authorize these LLC transfers?" "No." "This occupancy affidavit?" "No." He placed another paper in front of me. I froze immediately. It was one of the tax forms Derek had rushed me through at the hospital years ago. Only now I could see missing pages had been attached behind my signature. My stomach dropped. Every strange thing from our marriage started connecting at once. The hidden mail Derek intercepted. The tax notices he brushed off. The nights he insisted on handling documents alone. Even during the divorce, he controlled every financial record before my attorney ever saw them. The investigator leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Morelle, if this foreclosure had processed without review, you could have been held responsible for fraudulent loan activity." I stared at him in disbelief. Not just bankrupt, criminally exposed. Across the hall, Derek suddenly exploded. "She benefited from everything." He shouted. "You're acting like I stole from her." An investigator answered sharply. But Derek kept talking over him now, voice cracking under pressure. I realized something strange listening to him. He wasn't talking like a confident man protecting his assets anymore. He sounded like someone trying to survive. The conference room door opened. One investigator entered carrying a final document. He placed it directly in front of Derek across the table. "Mr. Morelle," he said evenly, "this affidavit states you declared yourself sole owner of the property under penalty of perjury." Derek went completely still. The investigator folded his hands. "This changes everything." The truth came out over the next several weeks. Not all at once. Not with some dramatic confession. Piece by piece. Document by document. Every investigator, attorney, and forensic accountant uncovered the same pattern. Derek had spent years building a financial empire using my identity as the foundation underneath it. During our marriage, he quietly attached my name to investment properties because my credit was cleaner than his. He created LLCs that looked independent on paper, then shifted ownership between them whenever lenders started asking questions. Legally, it created the appearance of stable assets. In reality, it was debt stacked on top of debt. And the house Derek won during the divorce? It had never fully belonged to him. That was why he fought so hard to control the paperwork during court proceedings. Why he insisted on handling every financial disclosure himself. Why he pushed me to sign documents quickly without reading them. He wasn't protecting assets. He was hiding liabilities. After the divorce, Derek doubled down instead of stopping. He refinanced the property repeatedly to maintain the image of success he'd built around himself. New loans paid older ones. New investments covered failing projects. Online, it looked like he was thriving. Luxury vacations. Expensive dinners. photos beside pools and sports cars. But behind all of it, the structure was collapsing. And when the payments finally stopped, the bank's internal review exposed ownership records that didn't match the filings Derek had submitted elsewhere. That was the mistake that brought everything down. One afternoon, while my attorney reviewed documents beside me, Derek requested to speak with me privately. Against everyone's advice, I agreed. He looked exhausted. Not polished, not confident, just tired. "You can still fix this," he said quietly once the door closed. "If you sign the release forms, the bank may settle everything without pushing further." I almost laughed again. After everything he'd done, he still thought I existed to clean up his messes. "You used my name for years," I said. "And you only panicked when someone finally noticed." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand how fast things got out of control." "No," I replied calmly. "I understand exactly." That was the last real conversation we ever had. A month later, Derek's financial advisory firm placed him on indefinite leave pending investigation. Several licensing boards opened formal reviews into his business practices. People who ignored me during the divorce suddenly started reaching out. Mutual friends who once repeated Derek's version of events now asked if I was okay. His social media accounts quietly disappeared within days. So did the photos of the house. Meanwhile, investigators formally concluded that I'd been manipulated into signing documents under false pretenses rather than knowingly participating in fraud. That changed everything for me financially. The debts tied to the property were separated from my personal liability. Attorneys reopened portions of the divorce settlement after discovering concealed assets and fraudulent disclosures. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling like I was drowning. Months later, I stood inside a small house across town holding a plain white envelope from the bank. Not a mansion, not luxury, just mine. I opened the letter carefully. Final confirmation. No remaining claims. No unresolved debt. My name was clear. I sat down at the kitchen counter and thought about the last day of my marriage, Derek driving away in my car, convinced he'd beaten me completely. Back then, losing everything felt permanent. Now I understood something he never did. You can rebuild a life honestly. You can't build one forever on lies. 3 years ago, Derek left me with nothing. Turns out, he was the one borrowing time.